We'll call the Policy and Academics Committee meeting to order for August 16th, 2023. First order of business is our roll call.
Dr. Gia?
Here.
Ms. Bourgeois?
Here.
Ms. Wells?
Here.
Policy and procedure section of the meeting, proposed policy revisions and new policy. The first policy up is to approve revisions for policy AC, school attendance boundaries, as presented by Mr. Barry Philps, Director of CWA. Do I have a motion? A motion by Ms. Bourgeois, seconded by Ms. Wells. Is there any, we'll let Mr. Philps go ahead and speak on this.
So in 2018, due to a decrease in enrollment at St. Charles Elementary School, we looked into increasing enrollment at that school. We ended up extending the boundaries, which impacted 5 other schools, and increasing enrollment by about 65 students, which is what our goal was at that time. The board in 2018 approved that change, which impacted 5 schools. However, for some reason, it wasn't put into policy. And until recently, when that boundary came to question by a family, we realized what had happened. It was changed on our maps. It was changed on our CWA maps. An email was sent to the principals, explaining to them what the change was, but we didn't put it in the policy. So what the change was that we extended the boundary where St. Charles Elementary School is. We extended boundaries south towards Graceland from Brooklyn Lane to Darwin Lane on LA1, and on 308 we extended it from the Baptist Church to Robichaux Lumber, right around that area where Robichaux Lumber used to be, and going back towards Thibodeau on 308 we went from Lafourche Crossing to Martinez Lane, and on LA1 we went from Lafourche Crossing to La Day, which is right next to where Alumni Grill stood. So by doing that, we extended the boundaries, increased enrollment at St. Charles, and decreased enrollment somewhat at 4 other schools. So I asked the board to consider putting that in the policy.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on this item? Okay. Do we have any board discussion on this item? Ms. Bourgeois?
The Darwin Lane that you need to is both sides of the street.
Both
right?
sides.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? Since none, we'll go ahead and vote. And the motion carried. Next item, item B, to approve revisions to policy BBC, board committees, as presented by Ms. Marlborough, District 7 board member. Do I have a motion? Ms. Wells and Ms. Bourgeois, first and second. Ms. Marlborough?
When I was discussing this publicly, someone from another district said they were kind of appalled and took it as I was putting the superintendent down, which in fact I was not. I was discussing what this says. And so because they were appalled by it, that's why I put it up.
Okay. Any public discussion, or I'm sorry, public comment on this item? Any board discussion on this item? All right. With no discussion, we'll go ahead and vote. And the motion fails. Item C, to approve revisions to policy BCAD, teleconference remote participation in school board meetings as presented by Ms. Daphne Jones, Director of Special Education. Do I have a motion? Ms. Bourgeois, Ms. Wells, 1 and 2. Ms. Daphne.
This is a revision to the policy. The legislature passed Act 393, which will allow for public participation for the public who have an identified disability recognized by the ADA, as well as allowing school board members to participate via electronic means as in the board meeting, as well as recording their votes. And that's the revision to.
Okay. Any public comment on this item? Any board discussion on this item? All right, Mr. Duplantis?
All right, so just to make sure, this is only in the case of a disability,
That is correct.
not if you're feeling ill or you got a headache
You
or
have
you're
to
late
have
from
a
work.
recognized disability that the ADA recognizes. And so we have a process in place that by noon, we're hoping this policy passes by noon on the day of the meeting, that the public or a board member will have to call us. We will have a form to fill out. They'll have to identify the disability. And then once that's been approved, then we will give them a number to call in to have a Google Meet. So it would be live. We talked about different ways, but the YouTube video feed has a 35-second delay. And we didn't think that would be appropriate, especially if you want to have comments and then as well as
I continue on to do a follow-up. Go ahead.
Yes, please. We ready for that?
We are ready for that.
IT, we ready for that?
We talked about it with the Google Meet is live, it's real time. Before a caller, if we put a Chromebook on the side of any chairperson there, you can actually see that person logged in and recognize them right then and there with their question or comment.
Ms.
Sure.
Sharp.
So if you could just clarify for me, this is only in the instance of emergency type situations and not for regular board meetings? Is that
for
correct?
every
For
public meeting.
anything? Okay.
But you have to have a recognized disability.
Okay.
It's not for anybody who's at home and just feels like calling in. And that's why we're going to control how we we give out that number, because it would just be too massive for us to be able to do that. And so this is just dealing with board members or the public who have that recognized disability.
Any other discussion with the board? All right, since none, we'll vote. And motion carries. Item D, to approve revisions to policy BCBI, public participation, is that the same one I read? No, it's different. Public participation in school board meetings as presented by Ms. Daphne. Now, do I have a motion? Ms. Wells, Ms. Bourgeois? This one adds on to that, Ms. Daphne? So one was teleconference
Oh, right.
and one was participation, two different policies.
But it affects both.
It affects both, so there's no other commentary. Okay. Is there any public comment? Any board discussion? All right, since none, we'll vote. And motion carries. Item E, to approve revisions to policy EBBB, school and student safety, as presented by Mr. Jared Brose, Safety Manager. Do I have a motion? Ms. Bourgeois and Ms. Wells. All right, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. So this afternoon, we have policy EBBB up for recommendation on amended changes. This is due to a recent act that was passed in legislation of the 2023 year. It's Act 164. This policy was already existing, but our consultant group, Forethought Consultant, in line with the board's attorney's recommendations, were to accept these amendments into policy. One, to define risk as imminent, and then as well as some changes on the reporting procedures for our administrators. So it would be my recommended action to adopt the amendments into policy EBB, student safety.
Any public comment? Any board discussion? Ms. Petito?
I just have one question. Under mandatory reporting, I understand what it means, but it's a little confusing that report the threat to local enforcement agency, and if the employee is not the school administrator, to the school administrator. So you're saying that the employee reports it to the local police and then to the administrator?
Yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
Through child welfare and attendance, we have mandatory
Yeah, I know that.
training. So any employee, if they notice that going on, then they can make that report, and then if they're not the administrator, inform the administrator.
Any other board discussion? And sensing none, we can vote. Motion carries. Item F, to approve new policy BDCB, carpool and bus line safety, as presented by Mr. Jared Bro, Safety Manager. Do I have a motion? Ms. Wells, I'm gonna take this one. I'll second that. Ms. Bourgeois? All right, Jared.
So again, we have a new policy here for us tonight. This was brought about in the same legislation, the 2023 year. This act is Act 362. It came from an unfortunate incident where a student at an elementary school got struck by a vehicle. So they put this into play, and it would be our recommended action as in line with Forethought Consultant and the board's attorney to adopt this policy. It outlines safety factors as far as the administration, what they have to do to ensure the safety of the students and their staff, as well as posting signage throughout the carpool and bus lines. That way all of our parents and visitors are aware of that as well. So it would be the recommended action to adopt this new policy.
All right. Is there any public comment? Any board discussion?
I have a question. Some schools are 3 through 5. So will they just implement the policy as a whole overall for all students in 3 through 5? Or because it said K through 3. So how would they go about doing that? I'm just asking because I don't want to put more work if they don't know what child is a 3rd grader and what child is a 5th grader.
So, yeah, we would definitely implement this policy at all of our elementary schools. That would cover K through 5.
I just wanted to,
Oh, please, Ms. Wells.
I know at a lot of schools the ID tags are different things, different grades, so they can identify what age students, so then it's really exactly.
Really, the only part of it is they have to, K through 3 is they have to be accompanied by school personnel. That's the only difference for that part. School personnel accompanying them. The rest is for everything.
Well, all right. There's no other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote. carries. Item G, to approve new policy IDCJ, continuous learning, as presented by Ms. Kelly Brulette, Supervisor of Data and Accountability. Do I have a motion? Ms. Bourgeois and Ms. Wells. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. So, as a result of Senate Concurrent Resolution 63, school districts are mandated to have a continuous learning plan. In case the district, for any reason, has to enact modified operations on a short-term, medium-term, or long-term basis. And it's a way for us to ensure that we are offering high-quality instruction to all of our students throughout any type of modified operations that happen because of any type of school closures. In other words, there's a large portion of our students who are unable to attend school on a regular basis because of some event. And so this plan outlines how instruction will be delivered, student expectations, attendance, and how that's going to be taken, any support that we would offer for our teachers as they deliver high-quality instruction, and communication with parents and families throughout the process about what the expectations are, about how they can contact their schools, their teachers, if they have any questions about instruction. So what we are in the process of developing the plan, and once the plan is approved, it is posted to our website, and it is reviewed and revised on a yearly basis.
There it is. Is there any public comment on this item? Any board discussion on this item? Involved?
So like if a student has like a health condition and the doctor pulls them out for a certain period of time, does this apply to them to do?
And this is for modified operations. In other words, there's just a large portion of our students who are unable, like in the event of a hurricane or any type of pandemic. This is in direct relation to those events that prohibited us from attending school, and there was a lot of unfinished learning that occurred, and so this is just in an effort to prevent those things.
Any other discussion? Since you know, we can vote. Motion carries. Item H, you consider approving revisions to policy IDFA, interscholastic athletics, as presented by Ms. Jamie Marlborough, District 7 member. Do I have a motion? Ms. Wells? Ms. Bourgeois? All right, Ms. Marlborough.
I first off want to say that I'd like the board members to know in July, I attempted to bring it
Can you
to.
speak up, please? I'm thinking people I can't hear.
But with that being said, state law, revised statute 441 through 447, 447, Fairness in Women's Sports Act clearly defines man and women by biological differences. It clearly explains with those definitions how biological males have a greater advantage over biological females. This is from the RS. Inherent differences between men and women range from chromosomal and hormonal differences to physiological differences, resulting in men generally having denser and stronger bones, tendons, and ligaments, larger hearts, greater lung volume, more body mass, a higher red blood cell count, and a higher hemoglobin, as well as a higher natural levels of testosterone, which affects traits such as the development of type 2 muscle fibers, all which result in men generally being able to generate higher speed and power during physical activity. Biological differences between females and males, especially as they relate to natural levels of testosterone, explain the male and female. The difference between females and males, especially as they relate to natural levels of testosterone, explain the male and female secondary sex characteristics, which develop during puberty and have lifelong effects, including those most important for success in sports. Categorically, they are strength, speed, and endurance, generally found in greater degrees in biological males than biological females. Revised Statute 444 clearly defines the designation of athletic teams as follows. And the statute basically says that, read it, but go and scroll down. It basically defines that we have several different options in the way it's read, but, each intercollegiate or interscholastic athletic team or sporting event that is sponsored by a school and that receives state funding shall be expressly designated based upon biological sex as only one of the following. One, except as provided in subsection C of this section, a male, boys, or men's team or event shall be for those students who are biological males. Two, a female, girls, or women's team or event shall be for those students who are biological females. Three, a coeducational or mixed team or event shall be open for participation by biological females and biological males. Athletic teams or sporting events designated for females, girls, or women shall not be open to students who are not biologically female. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed to restrict the eligibility of any student to participate in any intercollegiate or interscholastic athletic team or sport designated as male, men's, or boys, or designated as co-ed or mixed. Nothing in this chapter is intended to prevent any school from implementing or maintaining a coeducational or mixed athletic team or sporting event, which is open to both biological males and biological females, so long as female, girls, or women's athletic team or sporting event is not disbanded for the purpose of creating a coeducational or mixed team or event, which would thereby result to the detriment of students of the female biological sex. Nothing, and E is, nothing in the chapter shall be construed to apply to an intramural athletic team or intramural sport. The state law unfortunately never made it to our policies. The current policy prior to revisions has our district rely on LHSA for our athletic policies. Upon reviewing LHSAA's policies, it disturbed me to find, in my opinion, hidden behind the glossary in the 2023-2024 handbook, a gender equity position statement. The statement reads, in all fairness to LHSAA, it basically reads and says that any student that transitioned prior to puberty or went through surgery and is roughly 2 years out, that they can play in the sport that they transitioned to. And in my opinion, that contradicts state law. And so currently LHSA has it highlighted in purple. I don't know if they're going to correct it, to be fair to them. But it concerns me because we rely heavily on them to follow state law and implement in our policies. We are in a day and age that as a board, we cannot rely on private companies to create and make policies that we just go along with, despite how it contradicts the public's views, our promises to the public we serve, and our state law. As a constituent and now as an elected board member, I've heard it. It is the state and federal government that you need to take these issues to. Well, the public in 2022 did take the issue of boys and girls sports to our lawmakers, and our lawmakers overwhelmingly agreed that biological males do not belong in girls' sports. By placing this provision into our policies, we are being transparent, we are setting the expectation, and letting it be known that we will uphold state law. LHSAA is a private entity, despite all member dues that are paid with taxpayer money by all public schools that are members. We as a school board and a school district have to follow state law. We have an obligation to put state law into our policies. LHSA, despite possibly removing the hardship appeal statement from the gender equity position statement in their handbook, can they be counted on to follow state law? Despite the changes that may come to the handbook, the question I would like you to think about is, people like myself that did not write to all of their Republican lawmakers that overwhelmingly passed this, media outlets, and grassroots efforts, would LHSA have moved forward to potentially be changing their policies? And I hope that the Fairness in Women's Sport Act is something that we can put into our policies to protect our daughters and the girls that attend LaFouche Parish Public Schools from inequality, from potential harm, and all the hard work, and recognize that by doing this, we recognize the hard work that they're putting in to be in the best that they possibly can.
Before we get to open public comments, Mr. Sape, come on down, sir. And he has checked that he supports the recommendation and would like to speak. Go ahead. You know that.
Ms. Mulville did a real good job there.
Give us your address if you don't mind.
110 Bourgeois Street, Racine, Louisiana, 70394.
Mr. Ron Sape is his name.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You did a really good job of explaining the meat of the policy. The the Fairness in Women's Sports Act was an act that was enacted by the legislature last year in the 2022 regular session. That's current state law. It's been state law for about a year and a month, maybe. The last few items this committee took up were all about state laws that were passed in the legislature in 2003. So I don't know what the issue is or why the committee shouldn't adopt this one as well, because you've done precedent in the last few items. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any board discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, please, come on.
Debbie Melvin, 322 Cedar Tree Drive, Thibodeau. I too looked at the LHSAA policy in light of what just passed in the legislature with HB 648. And they just revised this on the 10th, and I don't know, when everybody looked at it, but it is very clear here to me because they have struck out some of the information that has to do with reassigned gender, but it specifically says, according to, and this is the same verbiage from the law, it says the term biological sex is defined as, biological sex means a statement of a student's biological sex on the student's official birth certificate, which is entered at or near the time of the student's birth. And then it goes into the fact that a female plays on a female team and a male plays on a male team. And that's what's in current law. And I think if y'all go with the LHSAA rules, you'll be fine. I mean, I think that it's in their new handbook this year, so just come in.
Any other public comment? All right, any board discussion? As well?
I would just like to say that since it is Louisiana state law and we do have to abide by their rules, and it was not recommended by our attorney to add this into our policy. So even though we're not if whoever doesn't vote for it, doesn't mean that we're not, we're in support of having males play on female teams. We just, by the recommendations, it's not to be put in our policy from our attorney.
Any other discussion?
Yes, all of the things that we revise usually comes from our consulting company, Forethought, who looks at all the laws that are passed in the session, legislative session, and then they recommend to us things that we should revise in our policies. And this has not yet been recommended to us by Forethought to revise. So that's why I would be voting against.
Any other board? Ms. Mulder?
I do believe the policy for LHSAA was struck through, and then the state law was underlined and it's highlighted in purple. Typically when we see that, it's because a policy change is coming when we put up policy. What fears me is, would any of this have been done had I not called Christian Garrett? Had any of this been done had I not called and spoke to Jeff Landry? Had any of this been done and changed had the public not been made aware of what was in their policies? And that's where it becomes an issue if we're going to rely on other entities that the state courts have said are public, not public entities, they are private entities that are going to allow these type of position statements to be placed in there, and we're going to just stay neutral this whole time, then wouldn't that open us to liability? Because we're heavily reliant on LHSAA, and if they are violating and potentially violating or contradicting state law, would that not be an issue? And I don't know what was said, because when I was corresponding, it was not told to me that I should not put this into policy. So I would like to be the record to reflect that that's not what was stated to me, and I would like to have that email or correspondence told to me that this should not be put into to our policies.
No, Ms. Mellon, I'm sorry, we moved to so, thank you. Any other board discussion? Ms. Babin?
I just want to clarify that, I think, so that everybody understands, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page here. No matter if LHSAA has a policy in a book, we're going to follow state law. So even though we do follow LHSAA policy, if that's not in accordance with state law is going to trump how we act accordingly. So I just want to put that out there. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page and understands that it doesn't matter if it's an LHSAA rule. Yeah, we do follow LHSAA policy, but state law is what trumps. Thank you.
Ms. Marvel?
With that being said, why wouldn't we? If it's state law, we put all the other state laws. Why would we not want a provision in there for our athletic directors, our coaches, our parents, our public to know that this is the policy, these are the laws. It sets the expectation and potentially could prevent future harm down the road if it's in our policies, especially if LHSAA is going to put forward things that they did put forward had possibly grassroots efforts, had possibly not calling, informing them, not happen. That's where I think the disconnect is. And if we're going to rely on them to respect state law, then we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation because it would have never been put into their policies or into their hardship appeals and their gender equity position statement.
Mr. Martin, would you like to make a statement?
I think I concur with a lot of the statements that were made here. I spoke to the folks in Forethought. If this policy is amended, the school district would be the only school district to amend this policy based on this law change that happened a year and a half ago. I spoke to the director of the Louisiana High School Athletic Association. He told me that at its next September meeting, that the LHSA policy will marry to the Louisiana revised statutes verbatim. So, it is my opinion, the policy as written today will both be in accord with state law and LHSA law.
Ms. Bertita?
Yes, and LSHAA would not do anything that would be not in compliance with state law. You know, they're opening themselves up for litigation if they do. So they have to follow state law, even though it is an association of schools, high schools. I just want to make that comment.
All right, so we'll call this the last time, all right, Ms.
Mr. Martin, does LHSA have a governing board and do they have to make a vote? If they have to vote on the changes, it's not guaranteed. And like Ms. Bertita said, she doesn't believe they would do it. But if that policy's been that way since June in the 2023-2024 handbook. So we can't sit here and effectively say, oh, they're not going to violate the law. Well, they had something in there that was encouraging its members to the hardship appeals process, which would allow a biological male into female sports. So that's where the concern comes from. And until those things are there, I am just at a loss that this board would not want to put forward this rule to protect our girls.
All right, if we're closing discussion, we'll go on to our vote. And motion fails. Item I, to approve revisions to policy JB, attendance, as presented by Mr. Barry Phillips, Director of Child Welfare and Attendance. Ms. Bourgeois and Dr. Giat, first and second. Barry.
So in this policy, prior to last year, a student didn't have to enroll in school until the age of 7. The law changed last year, which now requires a student to enroll at the age of 5 by September 30th of that year. So we need to make that change in this policy, as well as this policy be addressing attendance, tracking attendance for hybrid and virtual learning. I ask the committee to consider those changes.
Is there any public comment on this item? Any board discussion?
I just want to say, I'm so thankful that they changed that law from 7 to 5. Being a principal of a pre-K to second grade school, we had a few students that did not come in until the age of 7, and they have a lot to catch up. So this is great. This is a great law.
Any other board? All right, sensing none, we'll go ahead and vote. And motion carries. Item J, to approve revisions to policy JBD, student absences and excuses, as presented by Mr. Barry Phillips, CWA Director. Do I have a motion? I will move it first, and we'll go Ms. Wells second. All right, Barry.
Yeah, so there was a big push in legislation this year to allow 5 mental health or behavioral health days for families and students who needed it. The push was to exempt those days, and at the last minute, it failed. And although the mental health days were approved, it's now approved as non-exempt days. Problem with approving it as exempt days was that a parent note would be considered on the same lines as a doctor's note, which are exempted days. So the State Committee of Child Welfare and Attendance Directors were happy with the way that law ended up. So that's part of this new law, as well as requiring school counselors to meet with those students after the second absence for mental health or behavioral health. So I asked the board, the committee, to consider that change.
Any public comment on this item? Any board discussion? Marlboro?
I have a question. So following the second absence, basically the school would get involved and try to find out what the underlying issue is. Is that the school's place? That's for the parents to decide. Or am I reading that incorrectly? Even that says to go get them other services.
You read it right.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we can vote. And the motion carries. Item K, to approve revisions to policy JGCD, administration of medication, as presented by Ms. Daphne Jones, Director of Special Education.
So this.
Hold on, Ms. Daphne, Ms. Bourgeois and Ms. Wells. All right, Ms. Daphne, it's your floor.
Okay. So, this policy, this, was an act, 694, and it was enacted in 2018. And most boards did not act upon it, because there was not really a need for it. But however, with, the fentanyl abuse that we have now, they have revisited this, and and school boards have requested to be able to add this to their medication list. And it's Narcolazone, which is Narcan, which would, it's an emergency medication for anyone who would be under opiate overdose. And we have worked with the Sheriff's Department, as well as working with South Central Louisiana Human Services Authority. And so we are recommending to add this to the policy, that the nurses can administer this drug, as well as any school employee who has received the medical training. We are working with South Central Louisiana Human Services. They are giving us the drug. It's Narcan is you know it by. And they're going to give us the drug and also provide training on the administration of the drug. And it's recommended that where we have our AED equipment, that would be available. And also, every SRO officer carries the drug with them at the schools. So we believe that this would be a life-saving medication. And we've spoke with the attorney and our nurses staff, and we recommend that you adopt this.
Any public comment on this item? Any board discussion? Sensing none, we can vote. And the motion carries. Agenda 3, academic updates, curriculum and district data accountability. Ms. Kelly.
Hi, it's me again. So for the past few weeks, I have been working with the elementary team to implement a K-3 literacy screener that is now mandated by the state of Louisiana. So in anticipation of a K-2 accountability model that is going to begin next year, the state has adopted one single literacy screener to assess where students are in their literacy development and their preparation for reading, and that is DIBELS 8. So we are very lucky in that we have already been using this particular instrument, but there is an additional measure that we have to ensure that the test is given using test security measures. So I've been working with, like I said, the elementary team to actually train all of our administrators, our school administrators, test administrators, and school test coordinators on test security. We're providing accommodations for those students who qualify for accommodations, and so working through that with those folks because they have never done state testing before, and so the last couple of weeks have been very busy with that, and we are going to again repeat the administration of the screener in December and then again in April, because that is when the state has opened the window that we are able to actually administer. In addition to that, I'm going through data review and certification, which is the last time that administrators will be able to look at data before it becomes a part of their school performance score, which we anticipate getting those in November. And that is for the Dropout Credit Accumulation Index and ACT. And I've been working with the district leaders. We're actually developing departmental action plans about how we're going to address student needs and teacher needs and administrator needs in the coming year. And we're doing that through the curriculum meeting, which has been very exciting that we're all getting to collaborate on what we're doing departmentally and how that all kind of fits together.
All right, special education, Ms. Daphne.
We've been busy. We've been working and spending money with IDEA grant. We are currently updating all our high school significant disabilities kitchens with some new appliances, some new small appliances to stay current, because I think that hadn't been done in about 25 years. We asked the teachers, and they're like, okay, what do you need? And they go, oh, a can opener. I said, no, think bigger. So that is in the process, and that should be updated soon. We're replacing active panels. We did a bunch last year, and this year we're in 2,000 panels that we bought in 2019 are now won't work with new technology. So we have a plan in place that every year we'll replace those. And we're also we're waiting for the new laptop computers for special education teachers to come in. Prior to COVID, which was 4 to 5 years ago, we had bought all our special education teachers' laptops, but now that needs to be updated as well. And we're finalizing our professional development for this school year. And as far as K to second literacy assessment, we now, because we have a literacy assessment, we now have a K to second alternate assessment that we are learning about. And there's a process that we're going to put in place. And we have a rubric that we're going to follow, and we're putting that unique learning in, which is our curriculum for our most significant disability students. So we'll be able to track that on their benchmarking system and apply that to the rubric. So that's our next step. And those IEPs have to be adjusted to reflect the Louisiana connectors, which is the standards that they use for students with significant disabilities. And then we are also having a little trouble with ESER. Of course, the State Department, can't rest on their laurels, and we have a system working, but they haven't updated. And so we have a few workarounds for that, and that's been keeping us busy for the last few weeks. That's it.
Thank you. And update from technology, Mr. Jamie.
Good evening. Like Ms. Jones, we've been extremely busy this summer as well. On July 11th, we hosted what we hope to be an annual tech conference in our district. We partnered with CQ and offered one-day professional development, continuous learning day for our educators. We had over 60 educators. Our first offering, which we thought was fantastic. We had some representation from some of our major vendors there, and just, offering some PD sessions, and we had some of our educators as well as some educators from around the area present on different topics. It was very well received, and so we hope to make that a continuing thing over the next couple of years. We also utilize our summers to update our systems and constantly keep up to date with the ever-changing technology. And then we were also very busy with getting the new Thibodeau Middle School set up and all the technology that's inside.
Very good.
Any questions?
Thank you, sir. All right, with no further business, we're adjourned.